Now, in other news, Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of violating a 72-hour ceasefire that was brokered by the United States. It is expiring today. The Russian President Vladimir Putin, though, has said he does believe the war is coming to an end and he would like to negotiate what he calls new security arrangements with Europe. This, he says, via the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder as his preferred partner. That, though, is an idea which has been rejected by European governments. Well, let's bring in Kethevane Gorjestani, our foreign editor, who's covering the story for us today. And Kethevane, look, first of all, on that three-day ceasefire, has it held?
Well, look, just like previous sort of short-term, days-long ceasefires, Russia and Ukraine have basically accused each other of breaking that ceasefire, the 72-hour pause that was announced by Donald Trump on Friday. Russia's defense ministry insisted that it, quote, strictly observed the ceasefire. This despite the drones, the bombs, the artillery strikes on Ukraine, especially in the Kharkiv region, in the northeast, and Kherson region in the south, which killed, according to Ukrainian authorities, at least 3, injuring at least 7, probably more. Ukraine also saying that along the front line, the battlefield, there were more than 200 clashes between Ukrainian and Russian soldiers. Russia is also accusing Ukraine of sending over drones, saying it had downed 57 Ukrainian drones since the start of that ceasefire. With a little bit of analysis of data from NASA, the Institute for the Study of War, their conclusion over these 3 days of ceasefire was that military activities did decrease. However, they did not absolutely stop, but there was clearly a significant decrease. The question is now, what will happen tomorrow? Would it just pick up where it stopped when the ceasefire started?
Right, well, Donald Trump has been striking a rather optimistic tone. He said, look, this could mark the beginning of the end of the war. And on the diplomatic front, have we seen sort of any moves towards that?
Well, look, there's been diplomatic activity with Rustem Umerov, who's the chief Ukrainian negotiator in this matter. He was in the United States just before the start of the ceasefire at the end of last week. He met with Steve Witkoff, with Jared Kushner, the two top negotiators for the Americans. And Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, announced right after that meeting that there would be likely U.S. envoys, probably these two, though we don't know exactly who the Americans would be, but that he was confident that they would be able to bring Americans in Ukraine probably at the start of the summer, or at least that is their hope. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, on the other hand, he sort of mimicked the language of Donald Trump over the weekend, saying that the war was coming to an end. But his spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, he said pretty much the opposite, saying peace was, quote, a very long way away. Vladimir Putin also suggested helping out with the negotiations, as you mentioned, by bringing in the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who has obviously very close ties with the Russians since he left his position as German chancellor. But of course, the Germans and the Europeans, by and large, rejected that idea. Let's take a listen to Kaja Kallas, the EU's chief policy head, and how she explained why the Europeans weren't so happy with that idea.
First, if we give the right to Russia to appoint a negotiator on our behalf, that would not be very wise. And second, I think Gerhard Schröder has been the high-level lobbyist for Russian state-owned companies. So it's clear why Putin wants him to be the person, so that actually, he would be sitting on both sides of the table.
So no agreement there on who could be a mediator, but also no sign really that either side, the Russians or the Ukrainians, have moved at all on making significant concessions. The main issue, of course, remaining the fate of the Donbas region. Vladimir Putin, he wants to take control or take over the whole of Donbass, even the areas that the Russian army currently does not control. And of course, Zelensky has said multiple times, he's adamant about it, he will not surrender the Donbass region. So at least publicly, what we're seeing right now is that absolutely no progress has been made when it comes to the Russians and the Ukrainians getting a little bit closer to ending this war.
All right, thank you very much. Kethevane Gorjestani for us there.